Welcome back to episode 2 of our series that we are covering for the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the series is Our Habitual Ways. So if you haven't already, I would like to invite you and encourage you to check out episode number 1 of the series that I came out with about a couple of weeks ago. So check that out as we get into this video. This is episode number 2. So if we've been connected long enough, you know that I have some jams that I like to discuss. There are a few things that I like to discuss. And at least two things I want to bring up. It does pertain to this particular subject matter that we're going to talk about in this video. The first thing, one of the things that I like to talk about is DMO, Daily Method of Operations, performing tasks, setting goals, accomplishing those goals on a daily basis, ensuring that we have daily wins, that we are accomplishing daily goals. That's what DMO is all about. And it's all about being intentional and productive as well. Along with that, another one of my jams is that when it comes to our short-term goals, that we set short-term goals for ourselves and we set long-term goals, and just to ensure that those short-term goals align with our long-term goals. And what I mean by long-term goals is that I also like to encourage people to ask themselves, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? What do you see yourself doing in 20 years and beyond? Those are your long-term goals. And along with that, those short-term goals, they can be daily goals, they can be weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be. As long as those short-term goals are aligned with your purpose and your long-term goals. I say all of that to say this. Now, right now, we're going over chapter 1 of the book Atomic Habits. So we already covered the first half of the chapter. Now we are going to cover the second half of the chapter. Now, I love what James Clear laid out in the second half of chapter 1. What he talked about, the topic, it really just resonated with me because it had me thinking about DMO and short-term goals and long-term goals along those lines, because something that he covered, I feel like it was very significant. He talked about goals. And as I mentioned before, that's one of my jams. But what he talked about, we're about to go beyond that. And really, what I read, as I mentioned, it really resonated with me and it opened my eyes just a little bit wider. And another thing that it did for me personally is that it really defined what I have been talking about in regards to the DMO and the short-term goals being aligned with your long-term goals. It really provided a definition for that. And what I want to talk about is we're going to talk about goals, like I said. So it's one thing to set goals for yourself, to accomplish those goals, and to focus on them goals. But we about to take it to another level, y'all. We are about to take it to another level. So it's one thing in regards to goals, but it's another thing to establish systems. That's a game changer, y'all. In my humble opinion, establishing a system for yourself is a game changer. And there is a difference between the two. Now, in the book Atomic Habits, according to James Clear, the difference between a goal and a system is that goals are about the results you want to achieve, and systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So the key word in that definition of system is the process, because that's what it's all about. You see, there's the goal, which is pretty much the end game, but not really the end game, but it's something that you're trying to get to. But as you're trying to get to that goal, what are we doing between the starting point and the finish line? What's happening between that is the system. The system is running, it's processing, it's progressing. So, and that's what it's all about. This journey that we're on, this lifelong journey, it's all about the system. It's all about the process. It's how we're progressing through this whole ordeal. That's what it's all about. And I love it. And I feel like it is very significant. Now, I've heard credible people, they've mentioned systems. They mentioned establishing a system, creating a system, working a system. I've heard credible people bring this up. And basically, they would encourage people to be in love with the process, with the journey, because the goal is one thing, but the system is a whole nother thing. You're going to pretty much spend the majority of your time in the system. That's why it's very important that we really enjoy the system, the process, that we love it, that we in love with it. So again, it's all about establishing yourself in the system, because as it was said in the book, everyone has a goal. Every single person has a goal. Think about sports. You think about basketball, you think about baseball, you think about football. What is the goal of every single team? And that is to win the title. That is to win the championship. But only one team can accomplish that goal. And what is that dependent upon? It really depends on what you're doing from the starting line to the finish line. What are you doing in between time for you to accomplish that goal? It all depends on the system that you're running. That's what it's all about. So in order for you to win that championship, for you to gain that title, you must establish a great system, because only one person can accomplish that goal. Only one team can accomplish that goal. So when it comes to systems and goals and systems. Now, for many of us, if we're unfamiliar with the system, or we're not really too concerned about the system, we have a tendency to focus primarily on the goal. A lot of our focus is on the goal and not enough focus on the system. And that can create some problems as we go along on our journey. Now, according to the book Atomic Habits, these are a few of the problems that we may come across when we focus more on the goal than the system. So, problem number one, winners and losers have the same goals. I mentioned that before with every sports team, even with individual competition sports like tennis, like golf. They all have the same goal. They want to win the title. They want to win the championship. But only one individual and one team can accomplish that goal. So what are we doing in between time? Everybody's going after the same goal. Every single person, every single individual, every single team is going after the same goal. But what it boils down to is whoever has the best system will likely accomplish that goal, will likely win the championship, win that title. So what are you doing on a daily? What are you doing constantly in your life? Whether it's, shout out to the 9-to-5 millionaire, Jamal King. He has this concept called the 5 pillars, and it pertains to faith, family, fitness, finances, and future. So those are 5 key elements when it comes to our personal development, when it comes to our life in general. So what are we doing as far as our faith? Being the best server, being the best individual that you can be when it comes to your faith. When it comes to your family, being the best parent, being the best spouse. What are you doing to establish that? When it comes to finances, if you're trying to reach a certain goal in your finances, if you're trying to make a certain amount, what are you doing to get to that point? And what are you doing to not only attain it, but sustain it? That's another thing that I like to talk about. That's another one of my jams. It's one thing to attain, to accomplish a goal, but it's another thing to sustain, and that's to continue to establish that system. That's what sustainability comes into factor, right? So if we fall short, then you may have to make some adjustments in your process, right? So let's say if you're an individual or if you have a team and you have a goal, but you don't accomplish the goal, and some other individual or some team accomplish that goal. Now, there may be another goal that we have to accomplish, or it may be the same goal depending on what the circumstances are. So if you don't accomplish that goal, if you fall short, then you're going to have to make some adjustments in the process, in the system. So if you get another opportunity, just act accordingly and do what you need to do to fine tune your system. So that's the first problem that James Clear laid out in his book. Winners and losers have the same goals. The second problem is achieving a goal is only a momentarily change. So once you achieve the goal, then what? You see, you have these goals and you set for yourself, right? And then you accomplish them, which is great. Which is great. Congratulations. I commend you for accomplishing the goal. But once you accomplish that goal, once you achieve that goal, then what? Where do you go from there? Do you just stop doing what you're doing altogether? Or do you continue to operate in your system? See, because achieving a goal, it only changes your life for the moment. That's all it is. So it's great that you have achieved that goal. So you had your moment. What are you going to do next? So along with that, continuing to work within the process is establishing your system. So once you accomplish that goal, it's time to move on to the next goal. It's time to continue to establish your system, work within your system, operate in your system. That's what it's all about. So if it's not only, as I mentioned before, it's not only about attaining a goal, but it's all about sustaining the system, keeping your system in place. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, right? So that was, problem number 2, that accomplishing a goal is only like for a moment. Basically, pretty much that's what it is. Problem number 3. Problem number 3 is goals restrict your happiness. It's important to love the journey and love the process. See, this is why loving what you do is so important. Because I've heard many people say this before. They say that, as far as the job that you have, if you love what you're doing, it's not a job. If it's bringing you fulfillment and joy, that's what it's all about. It's all about loving what you do, because for most of us, many of us, we are in a situation where we are just doing things just to be doing things. And I think for many of us, that pertains to our jobs. You see, many of us, we're just on a job. We're working because, we're earning income. It pays the bills. It takes care of our family and all that good stuff. That's why we're on the job. And that's great. Having a job is a blessing. Remember that. I want you to understand that it is. Along with that, now, if you're doing this job just for those particular reasons, and there's not any joy and fulfillment in what you're doing, then you may want to reconsider doing some things differently. You really may want to consider that. So think about that. If you're not happy with what you're doing, more than likely it gets stale. You kind of going along with the flow. You're going along with the punches. You're rolling with the punches, right? You're just in there. You're just doing it just to be doing it. And it becomes stale. It becomes boring. And then a lot of times, we become unmotivated in what we're doing. And eventually, unfortunately, some of us quit what we're doing because there is no fulfillment and there is no joy in what we're doing. Or we just continue to do it and we just in this place where we don't want to be. It's one of those options that what we're doing. So it's all about doing what we love daily and constantly. So if you are in a place right now where, if you're achieving goals and it's restricting your happiness, you want to work on putting yourself in a position where you will love what you're doing. So if it is a job or a career, I know many people are going out there, they have side hustles, they have their own independent business on the side, they're entrepreneurs while they're doing their job and their career as well. That's something to think about if that's not something that you are doing already. So that is problem number 3 that we may come across as it pertains to being more focused on our goals rather than the system. And the last problem, the fourth problem that we may come across is that goals are at odds with long-term progress. You see, because in some cases, when you accomplish a goal, it may stop or slow down the process, right? So let's say, for example, when it comes to dieting. Now, when I was coming up, when I was growing up, when I was a young lad, I would witness my loved ones. They would tell themselves that they're going to go on a diet. So however long the diet might be a few weeks, a month, a couple of months, whatever the case may be. So they go on this diet, right? And they have a goal. They have a goal, they want to lose weight, whatever the case may be. They might want to lose, 15, 20, 30 pounds or whatever. So they accomplish their goal. And then, a lot of times they'll go back and start consuming that trash again, eating some food they're not supposed to be eating, drinking stuff they're not supposed to be drinking. And then like a few months later, they go on another diet. So the thing about this is, it was only a short-term fix. The diet was only a short-term fix. That's all it was. So instead of us going on a diet, how about we change our habits? That's something that we can do. Instead of going on a diet for a short period of time and then you got to come back around and do it, how about like a long-term solution? Just, doing things differently with our health and wellness. Consuming, different foods, different beverages consistently on a daily basis. Not just for a period of time, but throughout your life. Because again, this is a lifelong journey, right? So again, goals are at odds with our long-term progress. So a lot of times with this, once you achieve a goal, we are likely to revert back to our old habits because a lot of times we set these goals for ourselves, but it's not part of the bigger picture. It's not part of the long-term goal. It's not part of your vision. It's not the purpose. So you're just setting a goal for no particular reason. It's not really leading to anywhere. Just like a diet, right? We set a goal for a diet. Once we accomplish that goal, we're going back to doing the same thing we was doing before we went on this diet, right? So that's what I mean. That's what I mean because it's not. Here's a quote from the book. So it says it's not about any single accomplishment. It is about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. It's all about continuous growth. This thing is continuous. It's not temporary. So it's not a temporary fix. This thing is long term. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It's not how fast you can get to it, but how long you can endure, how long you can persevere. And that's why it is very important to focus as much, if not more, on the system than the goal. Peace and blessings to you as you continue your journey. So let me know what you think about this. Goals, systems. Which one do you focus on more? Which one are you going to operate more in? Are you going to be goal driven? Or are you going to be system building? Establishing the system. And I tell you once again, as I mentioned before, it really just opened my eyes a little bit wider. It reminded me, it resonated with me that yes, goals are cool. Goals are going to be there. And as it was mentioned before, everyone has a goal. Everyone may focus on the goal, but which one is more important? To focus more on the goal or focus more on the system? So I'm going to ask you some questions, and you can do some homework if you want to. I'll give you some homework. So when it comes to our system, I want to encourage you to do self-inventory on your system, because we are all operating in a system in some form or fashion. We're all operating in a system. It's just a matter of, how's your system set up? How stable is your system? How good is your system? Do your system need some improvements? So before I close us out, I actually want to read a part of chapter 1 of the book Atomic Habits. I want to share this with you real quick before we go. So it says, a system of atomic habits. If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you. The problem is your system. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Focusing on the overall system rather than a single goal is one of the core themes of this book. It is also one of the deeper meanings behind the word atomic. By now, you've probably realized that an atomic habit refers to a tiny change, a marginal gain, a 1% improvement, but atomic habits are not just any old habits, however small. They are little habits that are part of a larger system. Just as atoms are the building blocks of molecules, atomic habits are the building blocks of remarkable results. So I just wanted to share that little passage with you in chapter 1 of the book Atomic Habits. So basically it says that, we're going to talk about atomic habits, right? So atomic habits are within the system. Atomic habits are multiple habits that we're doing with the intent of being productive, and that we are intentional in doing the things that we need to do to make sure that they align with the greater good, that it aligns with a greater goal. So in order for that to happen, again, the atomic habits are within the system. And we're going to talk about that in the next few videos as we go through these chapters of the book. So once again, here's your homework. Again, do self-inventory on yourself and analyze your system, the system that you're currently operating in. And I really want you to be real with yourself. I really want you to be truthful with yourself as you analyze your system. If you feel like you need to make some changes, more than likely you do, regardless of where you are or where you think you are in your journey. There's always room for improvement. According to John C. Maxwell, that's the biggest room in the world, the room for improvement. So feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. Goals and systems. I hope that, if you're reading the book right now, or if you're just viewing this video as I break down each chapter as we go along, I hope that really resonated with you, because when I read it, it really just truly just opened my eyes and it resonated with me. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it really defined what I had been talking about with the DMO and the short-term goals, accomplish those, and it aligns with the long-term goals. And also not only about attaining, but it's also about sustaining as well. So I really hope that this resonated with you. Once again, feel free to leave a comment below. I would love to receive your feedback. I am Reggie B, and I appreciate you all tuning into this episode of the Growth Times Infinity podcast. And until the next time, keep growing and keep going.